Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're discussing Raised by Wolves, episodes 6 and 7. In these two episodes, we see the caring android family dismantled, the caring human family dismantling, and someone or something whispering even stranger things into the ears of Marcus. We begin with episode 6, titled Lost Paradise. We first see Mother reliving her archived memories, kissing Campion, and finding a new range of emotion inside of herself. We then see the exalted couple scouting to find happy children living with the androids and not in any immediate danger at all. Like the good imposter parents they are, of course they wish to change that. Marcus tells Mary that he wants to tell Paul about them being imposters, and she disagrees. It's a risky thing at this point. During these two episodes, we see him be thrust into the spotlight of the church as they believe him to be the prince that was promised. Paul reconnecting with the faith may stop any ability for the secret to be revealed. Even more so, if they do reveal what they did, it means that the prophecy is true, because he was orphaned by Caleb and Mary. They make a plan to run for the tropical zone, but they must kill Mother first. Otherwise, she would just keep coming until they were eventually found. He notices a pattern in her routine, meaning that they've been scouting for at least a few days, and they decide to figure out exactly where she goes alone each day. Mother and father talk about the exact same thing, and the tension between them is higher than ever. He is a jealous husband, wondering what his overpowered wife is doing. She claps back with a jab at his inability once again, and dismisses the excellent dad joke to reveal that she is growing tired of his presence at this point. I think that these episodes were grouped together because this comes full circle by the end of it, not to jump around too much, but when she is facing defeat and certain death, she realizes that she has been cruel and wants to apologize to father, make sure that he's all right, even if only a fraction of him remains. We then see Tempest and Vita talking about Tally, revealing that she has been seeing her more than the others, which adds to the horror of these two episodes that soon presents itself. Then Mother asking Tempest to promise her not to kill herself again. Tempest talks about the trauma from her assault, and Mother takes a very caring approach, tending to her feet and staying with her through the night. I think the significance of this is to show a genuine change in her, maybe brought on by the fact that she's experiencing these things inside of the simulation with Campion. She is becoming a more loving person because of the time she's spending in the sim, and I think her tending to Tempest's feet is a subtle symbolic reference to Jesus washing the feet of his disciples. It's a very intimate thing, right? We see Paul taking down a small living tree and later using it to build the trap for the beasts. He talks with Campion about burying the bones of the creature and how everything may have a soul. It feels like Campion is building his own religion from everything that he hears. I like the idea of another religion existing in this world and what that will mean for, who survives this first season. Campion and Paul do some fun mental challenges that immediately turn bad when Paul figures out in 23 seconds what Campion did in 23 minutes. He is accused of cheating, and it's made to highlight the brilliance of Paul here, but I also think it's worth considering that Paul is considerably older, with a brain maturing in the simulation while his body remained in stasis. We then get this cool shot of Mother and father sitting guard outside of the children's den, like wolves protecting their cubs. Hunter examines the can that he found, and Holly finds him, but decides to keep it to herself as well. They know that the church is near, but decide not to say anything. She trusts Mother and father at this point, but Hunter gets in her head, and I worry that once and if father and or mother get control of their bodies again, they won't just outright remove Hunter from the group like we spoke about last video. We also get the conversation about what Lucius's father did that Marcus forgave. It appears that his father took pity on an atheist child soldier who turned out to be a suicide bomber and killed half of Marcus's men. It's a touching thing, and I think it really hits Marcus hard, seeing members of the church that, maybe weren't so evil to execute children on spot, but also because of the dialogue later, it points to Marcus saving Mary from being a child soldier that would have done the same thing. Since both are female in this example, I wonder if that wasn't the standard for female atheist children. The boys were forced to fight, but the girls would kamikaze the enemy instead, but again, at the demand and indoctrination of the atheists, showing us once again that neither side had clean hands here. Marcus tells him that what his father did was not weakness, which ultimately means a great deal to Lucius, who clearly remains ashamed of this mistake. They go on to find the pods, they set the trap for Mother, and then we return to Mother humming, then being stopped by a mysterious whooshing noise. She notices an image that tilts her off the face of the planet, and it appears to be the kiss that she had with Campion that just happened at the start of this episode, and when Father enters, she gets aggressive, believing it to be him messing with her. The presence of this whooshing noise, however, points to this being related to the images and noises that people are hearing. It's interesting also that she sees this and Father sees this, meaning whatever is happening is either affecting them both or this is reality, and we're seeing physical manipulation happening with these phantom images and sounds. I think, again, it relates to the mystery die in the desert and, of course, the giant holes. Campion starts fighting with Paul about creating the trap that would kill creatures and gets a talking to by his parents about not being violent toward other people. He demands that he would do it again and calls his mother a hypocrite for the lives that she killed on Earth and the Ark. This entire conversation comes off to me as the showrunners telling the audience that this is a confused little boy. He is being torn apart on the inside by contradicting forces telling him who to be and how the world works, and he just doesn't know. This stance on being violent, again, comes off as childhood rebellion, something that he may not really mean. I think it also comes off as an honest look at the morality of taking another human life, a Socratic discussion about whether taking a life could ever serve a purpose. Surely it's not always wrong if it means the survival of him and his friends, and that questioning I find really interesting. Surely if it serves the greater good, taking a single human life is something that he could do. Unless I'm reading far too much into this, it feels like him saying again that he would do what needs to be done when the time comes. The discussion between Mother and Father here paints Mother as unstable. He doesn't know anything about the drawing or what she's been doing, but her insecurity causes her to be defensive instead of exploring other options about how this drawing came to be. She hears what may have been the whooshing noise again and flies off without delay, resting nicely for those that wish to kill her. While they're preparing the trap for Mother, Otho asks Marcus that if he survives, will he be pardoned, which is a very exact way of asking this question, not if the necromancer is killed, if he survives. Marcus thinks nothing of it, he laughs it off, but ultimately agrees, which undoubtedly he is going to survive, and you may think, I mean, come on, they're not gonna let him free because of what he did. Well, I think you better watch again who he asks this question in front of.
If I survive, will I be pardoned?
You betcha.
The mobile prison system is hearing the current leader of the faith, His Eminence, telling him that he will be freed if he lives and his crimes pardoned. I have zero doubt that this is going to cause some big issues for Marcus because he inadvertently freed this rapist, and the mobile prison system likely won't hold him again. He may be restrained again in some other kind of way, but every time he speaks, it feels like a manipulation. This time is no different. He made sure to ask this question in front of the android and Marcus and nobody else, so that he would be freed and could start manipulating the others again. I'm also curious what pardoning does to someone in terms of rank if he won't be the highest ranking official again. I think that may be a stretch. Right now, it feels up in the air in terms of plot. They could go a few different ways, and ultimately this is a theory, but I think that Otho being a free man is something that we'll see because of Marcus, and that prophetic dream where he saw himself as Otho could be pointing to Mary being his next victim. I also think it could be pointing to the group turning on Marcus, somehow finding out the secret, and putting him inside of the mobile prison system as well. Mother enters the simulation, hears that one other person has entered the simulation before, and it's left to us to decide who actually entered, because we never see Marcus and party enter the simulation again, and the plan involves a feedback loop caused by the solar disk, not a coding or programmed bug. She believes that the voice talking to her is a virus that had been living in the Ark's code, now making her malfunction, but the voice assures her that she is not malfunctioning. It seems like it's promising her a paradise, or like the episode title, a lost paradise. The simulation is a sexy dreamscape of her figuring out what her feelings are, and Marcus and team on the outside rigging explosives to blow her up. The simulation ends with a milky finish, and we get another shot of the stars, likely related to Marcus's dream prophecy, maybe foreshadowing her death or the collapse of the world around her. I'm not really sure. but she's woken up to the sun disk and manages to escape when the explosives do not fire. She becomes an earthbender and smashes everyone that she could before flying off. I will say the scene of the rocks levitating was so cool, so well done in terms of aesthetic and defining new powers for her and what this could mean for her development. She just keeps getting stronger, and I'm glad that they paired this episode with the next to show that she isn't explicitly overpowered. Mary goes in to steal Paul, even though the signal wasn't given, and the others follow. We see some spooky images of Tally following Vita and Campion, and Vita watches the picture of Mother and her creator kissing turn to black. Father gets most of the children to the ship, but loses Paul, and this was because of fucking Hunter, man. I despise Hunter for doing this, and I believe if Father has ever returned to his rightful state, he would easily forgive him because that's who he is, and it would be a great teaching moment, but equally, 300 kick him into the pit for all I care. Paul is reunited with his parents, and Marcus demands that he go back in there like the good child soldier, and he does. It's a really interesting contrast that I think may again point out that Marcus isn't a true believer. Child soldiers are a clear atheist trick, and using it here is super risky. It ultimately works out and is exactly what they needed to do, but it's interesting that Marcus would risk this in terms of maybe the church realizes that this isn't something that a Mithraic worshiper would think to do. I would love to see one of the followers call him out for this, maybe Otho, maybe Justina, hell, maybe even Paul as he comes into his own and realizes what his dad was really asking him to do there. Mother works on Father, removing all the bullets, and Paul returns to promptly steal her eyes and make a run for it. Marcus cuts her down and stops attacking when the voice returns and tells him to. The episode ends with us not being sure if Mother or Father will make it out alive, but a tiny hope that this surely cannot be their final death. Now we have episode 7, titled Faces. The episode picks up right where the last stopped, and we see Campion running to comfort a dying Mother. The soldiers go to tie Mother's hands, and Campion steals one of their pistols and tries to kill them. He of course doesn't pull the trigger, but I was really hoping that he would. With his epic speech about doing violence before, and that he will do violence again, him literally murdering another human would be a great way to keep us from knowing outright which side of the good or bad spectrum that he will exist going forward. This would be a very gray area in which some justification may exist, but Marcus escorts him away and Mother gets tied up in the other silo. Marcus celebrates his little soldier, leading them to victory, and they reprogram Father to be the loyal servants that he was meant to be. Mary also has a big problem for Marcus for what he did, comparing him to the people that forced them to fight as children and reminding him of the promise that he made back on Earth to make these people suffer for what they did. He dismisses her, and Mary says outright that it was these people that destroyed the Earth, aligning with the theory about the church from last video about this exact thing. Though it's an atheist saying this, so we may still not have the full picture. Marcus gets spooked when he sees the scalpel and makes the plan to reprogram Mother just in case more people arrive from Earth, which almost certainly means more ships will arrive from Earth, and I would not doubt if this season ends with another ark entering the sky or something far bigger that points to an immediate threat for them. A bigger ship would seemingly take longer to get here, just as a smaller ship was faster, so that could make sense. With this idea of two biased sides not giving us a full picture of what happened, having a single massive group of people that were on maybe the other side of the world or something dictating what actually happened and holding them both accountable would, really make for some good storytelling, I think. Marcus and Mother talk about what is happening with the children. Mother sees through the face change because of the surgical scarring and his original face being tattooed as a child. This is ultimately why Mother did not kill him before, but her attempts to suggest their shared interests fall on deaf ears. He does not recognize her as an atheist construct, but the one that killed dozens of his friends fighting in the war. It's a bit foolish, but I can understand his hesitation. The scene gets pretty weird here, with Marcus tempting Mother with, I think, a kiss, but ultimately she looks away, and he immediately leaves with the message that no one is to enter but him. Let me also point out that the essence burners they carry around this episode look exactly like the 12-sided die that was in the desert, thus further explaining why they thought it related to Sol. We see the home that mother and father built being used to honor Sol with prayer, and Vita meeting the changed father that immediately lets us know he is not the android that we know and love. Hunter looks really worried about the altered robot, however, and I think we're clearly shown a semblance of his old being still left alive when father clearly brushes against his face and spills the drink on the holy book. Holly makes a plan to get Campion some food and continues her anti-religion crusade, now fighting with the others again who are more willing to be embraced by the church now. Mary watches as Paul rebuilds from stone the construct that he planned on the ship, and to great effect. Both of the parents seem worried, but the followers of Sol believe him to be the prophesied orphan building the city of Mithras that he saw in his dreams. Holly talks to Campion about faking his belief in Sol to stay alive, and brought Campion some food, which felt like a nice thing to do until I realized that he was in a storeroom of only food that he could eat, right? He begins hearing the voice of Tally and it saying that they miss him. The camera pans and we get the creepiest shot yet. Then Tally disappears and we see another black-headed doll holding a fang or a thorn of some kind, and the voice telling Campion to kill himself. Now, this is the most aggressive I think the voice has been, maybe, excluding luring people into the holes to their deaths. I think, again, the images and the voices are what caused Tally to fall into the hole in the first place, but it's interesting that the things that have fallen into the hole are what people are seeing. We've seen Tally since the start, but this episode we also see Mouse return to Paul, and it's not just briefly. He shows others his newly returned companion, something that is physically in this world. It's interesting, but I think again, ultimately it points to all of these weird things being connected, and the fact that it's intelligent because it's using these things that people know to reach out to them in a form that they would understand. Mary and Paul go to check the trap that he made, and she remarks that one day she will eat something that tastes good. Paul replies with them eating good things all the time back on Earth, which enforces the point about the church being wealthy and everyone else not so much. Though if you recall, his real parents were cooking and eating in ruin just like they were, so maybe that was more of a recent development, thus why Paul was with the church before takeoff. Marcus plans to reprogram Mother, and they talk about his family dying and how he plans to be an imposter father to Paul. Mother messes with his mind here and gets under his skin. He leaves in a frustrated storm, but remarks that he is going to kill her. The voice returns and tells him that if he lets her live, he will be the king of this land, and pushes Paul to the ground. Now, it's really interesting to me why the voice's interests and Mother's interests of not wanting to die both align in this episode, and I'm not really exactly sure why, but I think we're missing a big piece of this puzzle, and ultimately when we have that, then we'll be able to answer why it wants to protect Mother here. The ceremony for Campion to join the faith starts. They get him from the storehouse and take him to the newly built church. The ceremony itself goes well into the point where he realizes that they used his siblings' headstones, a metaphorical and literal representation of them building their faith on the backs of fallen atheists. It's a pretty intense moment for Campion that ends with him making a run for it. He's grabbed by Father, and it's fitting that they get this moment. Father once believed that Campion would do a good job surviving among these people, faking his belief if he had to, and now finds it impossible. He sees them for what they really are and can't stomach even lying about believing in Sol right now. His own curiosity into the religion has been shot to death by the actions of those who do believe. We next see Marcus losing his marbles in privacy, seeing images of his former face, and his eyes are wide again like he's hearing the voice. It's an interesting scene, and he stops when he sees an image of two people standing next to a hole before Mary comes in and punches him in the face. She is upset that he hurt Paul, and he takes the approach of reminding her how great things are because of him. I think her parting words, "Where the fuck would I be without you?" are mocking him, right? Thinking instead of where she would be if she could get away from him right now. It's interesting that she would turn on him, but it's also understandable, seeing as he seems to be embracing his newfound position quite well. Marcus then goes off, taking father and mother into the forest, trying to get her dropped into the hole. While this is happening, we get what is actually the creepiest shot of the series so far, and the voice talking to Campion again about how alone he is. Before they get to the hole, Lucius stops Marcus and insists that he should accompany them. He declines, and because we know how this episode ends, he allows Mother to escape, which probably won't look good since he turned down the help, which, if Otho gets released from prison next episode, this will be 2 potential lethal forces that he inadvertently let go. He is probably looking like much less of a prophet now in the eyes of his peers. During the death march to the pit, Mother speaks highly of Father, hoping the best for him and Campion now that she won't be around. We also see that Tempest follows for a short while before not being seen again. And while she was watching, she sees 2 beasts follow the trail of Marcus and then turn away. I wonder if they are not hearing the same voices and maybe preventing them from going in for this meal. I also wonder, with Tempest being here or in the general vicinity, if after Mother wanders off after she escapes, if Tempest won't be the one that helps her recover. And I think that if that happens, will be a pretty cool moment. The pit scene manifests to Marcus seeing another version of himself and battling until he finally lands a blow across his own stomach. It's an interesting state here, but ultimately still aligns with this mythical voice and images, convincing people to self-harm or protect the black thing in the desert or keep Mother alive for some unknown reason, or fall into a hole. I think Marcus is a pawn of this hidden force right now, so he doesn't want to outright kill him, but wants to make him know that he can still cause damage if he disobeys, thus why he cut him across the stomach. Marcus returns to Mary, bloody and beaten, believing that he is the orphan boy that was promised and refusing to leave the faith. He is fully brainwashed at this point, and when he looks off screen saying that he told me this, I was really hoping that we would see a shot of the mouse sitting in the chair or something, but that ultimately didn't happen. I am really hopeful for Mary to have some growth in these final 4 episodes. I think that she could really rise here and take charge now that Marcus has completely lost it, and I think her just taking off with Paul wouldn't be a crazy action either, mama bear protecting her cubs kind of thing. But with that, we come to the end of the episode. Please let me know if you have any comments, questions, or theories, and I will do my best to address all of them. Special thank you to my supporters on Patreon. This month's highest tier donors are Michael Linck, Robert Holtz, and Channing Corley. Much love, everybody, and I cannot wait to talk to you all again soon.